brick wall. And I saw where the workers, 12,000 of them, line up at 3 o'clock in the morning to see if it might be possible to get through a checkpoint to go to work. And if they are injured on the job, they're summarily dropped off at a checkpoint and forfeit whatever compensation they may have received. 3 weeks ago, I planted fruit trees on the farm of Sami Abed. Settlers came down the hill and they poisoned and killed many of his olive trees. They have tried to drive him out and buy him out, but he won't sell and he certainly will not sell out. And despite his suffering, his spirit is indomitable, saying with a smile, "This is my heaven. Why would I want to leave?" And being with him reminded me of my Muslim friend Ibrahim Khalil. Settlers came and drilled holes and inserted poison in 900 of his olive trees. And I'm ever so grateful for this church working in partnership with the Parents Circle and Ibrahim Khalil to replant all 900 of those trees. But Ibrahim suffered an even greater tragedy. Sadly, his child was run over and killed by a settler who did not even stop to call for help. Ibrahim's grief-stricken wife never recovered from that tragedy. And sadly, Ibrahim himself died of cancer 2 years ago. I love Martin Luther King Jr. and Nelson Mandela, but I have equal love and equal respect for this Muslim man, Ibrahim Khalil. And for some inexplicable reason, this olive farmer from Palestine majored in English literature, specializing in American literature. And I don't know how he learned about her, but he loved Emily Dickinson as much as I do. Quoting her, "Hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul and sings a tune without the words and never stops at all." Pretty words, maybe even innocuous words when you're sitting in the comfort of a New England meeting house. But they are noble and they are courageous and they are inexplicable words when they're said by those who live under occupation, those such as Ibrahim Khalil. Hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul and sings the tune without the words and never stops at all. How do you say that when your child is killed and your trees are destroyed and your beloved wife languishes for the rest of her life in a psychiatric ward? It says something about the capacities of the human spirit. And so do not say to me, "Too bad the Palestinians haven't learned the power of nonviolent resistance." They live it and they breathe it every single day. Now, human nature being what it is, some do not. And some do give in to their anger and they do resort to violence. But as my teacher and my chaplain, William Sloane Coffin, used to say, you cannot have a revolution without revolting circumstances. So the right question is, what are we going to do about it? How are we going to stop the escalation of violence? How are we going to bring this injustice to an end? Not only for the sake of our Palestinian friends, but also for the sake of our Israeli friends. For surely there is no future in that troubled land unless that future includes both Israelis and Palestinians. I believe there's no future for that troubled land unless and until all the people of that land fall in love with that blessed vision that someday the streets of Jerusalem will be filled with boys and girls, Jews, Christians, Muslims, and those of no particular faith, all playing in the streets, no longer divided, no longer afraid. For me, there's nothing more despicable than those in the international community who shake their heads and say, my, oh my, what a pity this is, but what can I do about it? I've been to all the Tree of Life conferences, I've read the books, I've seen the films, I've read Mondoweiss, I've read Haaretz, I've even bought some Palestinian olive oil. But what else can I do? It's beyond my control. For our Palestinian and Israeli friends, I'm guessing that hope is a very, very precious and fragile commodity. And it's up to us, those in the international community, to keep that hope alive. And we need to understand that the fulcrum of change is here with us. Give me a lever, and I can move the world. What we need is a little more leverage. And that's what the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement is all about. And so I'm thankful for my own denomination, the United Church of Christ, and its resolution. I'm thankful to Jewish Voice for Peace and its bold initiatives. And I'm thankful to United Electrical for its comprehensive resolution. As I think about the powerful coalition of the trade unions in South Africa and the South African Council of Churches in their struggle against apartheid, I'm very, very thankful for the union members who came back from our last Tree of Life journey, resolved to be in solidarity with workers in Palestine. And Roger, I want to publicly thank you for your voice of conscience and integrity, saying to Bon Jovi, who performed in Tel Aviv just a few weeks ago, "You had a chance to stand on the side of justice. The dead cannot remind you of the crimes you've ignored. But lest we forget, to stand by silent and indifferent is the greatest crime of all." Thank you for those prophetic words, and thank you for reminding us that our silence is complicity. We're honored to have Roger with us. But there are other forms of leverage we can employ. Levers come in all different shapes and sizes. I have at home a big, tall iron bar that I use in the hills of Lyme when I need to dig a hole and move some New England granite. I haven't tried it, but it might be useful to moving some of our elected officials as well. But levers don't need to be that big or that heavy. Indeed, the best lever can actually be as small as this pen. I have here a great petition that was written by several members of our Tree of Life community. I hope all of you, if you haven't already, will sign this petition. Abraham Lincoln wrote the Gettysburg Address with his pen, thinking that what he said would soon be forgotten. But for generations afterwards, what he wrote has been a reminder of the true identity of our nation. And with her pen, the poet Emily Dickinson wrote thousands of poems and stuffed them away in a drawer, and only years later would they find their way over the ocean to the home of an olive farmer and give sustenance to his soul. Give me a lever, and I can move the world. Give me a lever, and I can bring hope to someone else. I'd like to close with a story. 3 weeks ago, our group was in Hebron on Shahada Street, only a day or so after an 18-year-old Palestinian woman was shot and killed by an Israeli soldier. As you can imagine, that day in Hebron was very tense, quite sad, and poignant for our group. And our guide was a thoughtful young man, a Jewish Israeli, a former soldier by the name of Nadav Benjamin. About 27 years of age, Nadav belongs to a group called Breaking the Silence. These are former Israeli soldiers who bear witness to the violation of human rights that they have witnessed. Their founder, Yehuda Shaul, is a good friend who has spoken at our conferences. I have tremendous respect for Yehuda and Nadav and the others I have met in Breaking the Silence. It takes a special kind of person to stand up and say, "This is what I have seen. This is what I have done. I have seen the intimidation at checkpoints. I have seen how the gun in my own hand dehumanizes me, even as it terrifies a child." Also, given how militant settlers can be, being a leader of such tours can be dangerous for those in Breaking the Silence. But they do it anyway, because they know how important it is, especially for those of us in the international community, to know what is really happening in the occupation of Palestine. As we walked along Shahada Street, I thanked Nadav for his time with us and asked him what it was that inspired him to join this group, Breaking the Silence. He said that what finally persuaded him was reading the powerful and prophetic editorials of a journalist by the name of Gideon Levy. Give me a lever, and I can move the world. Thank you, Gideon, for the work you do. I'm sure, like all of us, you must sometimes wonder if it makes a difference. For this 27-year-old man, clearly it did make a difference, and it helped him to break his silence. And I'm very confident that the words that you have shared with us today will help us to break our silence as well. Picking on Gideon. In the ancient biblical story, of Gideon. That mighty warrior started with 20,000 in his army, and cutting it down to a mere 300, 1.5%, he was victorious. While there's much about that biblical story that I dislike, the militarism, the violence, the xenophobia, and the theology of entitlement that enable that violence, I do like the mathematics. 1.5%. That's all the leverage we need. And if we, those of us who have been silent too long, would join together with Gideon, Suhail, Aline, Nassim, Nadav, and Roger, and all other voices of conscience, someday we will be victorious. Someday the occupation will end. And someday that monster of a wall will come down. And the streets of Jerusalem will be filled with boys and girls playing in the streets, no longer divided, no longer afraid. May we live in that hope. Thank you for being here, and thank you for listening.